It's the three greatest words in sports: heavyweight, title, fight. And it goes down tonight. UFC 260, Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. And who better than Chael P and myself and a couple of friends stopping by as well to help get you set for what should be a great night of fights. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new edition of Ariel and the Bad Guy right here on all the platforms, of course. That's Chael Sonnen, a.k.a. the Bad Guy. I'm Ariel, a.k.a. Helwani. Chael, later on in the program, we're going to be joined by two great minds from the world of combat sports: Jon Anik, the voice of the UFC, and also Teddy Atlas, one of the greatest minds in the history of boxing. He's going to help us break down tonight's main event. Of course, we're here to talk about UFC 260. Of course, we're here to talk predominantly about the main event. Francis Ngannou, second crack at the UFC heavyweight title. They met back in 2018, I should say, January of 2018. Of course, it was Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou in Boston, Massachusetts. On that night, Francis came out very strong in the first round, but then, of course, Stipe weathered the storm and was able to win via decision. Here we are 3.5 years later, Stipe the champion still after losing the belt to Daniel Cormier, and Francis on this amazing 4-fight winning streak. Now, Chael, this is what we have to start with. Most important question right off the bat. This is what the people are dying to know. Are you wearing a tuxedo jacket?
Maybe. Is there a way to? I don't think so. I thought it was just a suit jacket. I mean, I don't own a tuxedo, so no, I don't think I grabbed the wrong jacket. No,
it has a shiny. I mean, I actually feel very underdressed. I like when boxing announcers wore tuxedos back in the day. You have the shiny lapel. To me, a shiny lapel means tuxedo jacket, and I feel embarrassed that I'm not at your level.
It's a strong point by you. I don't know. I don't own a tuxedo, so no, I don't think I would have grabbed the wrong jacket. But, you know, one could slip in the closet. There'd really be no way to know.
No, well, you look great, just for the record. You look fantastic. It's apropos, heavyweight title fight. I mean, yesteryear, boxing heavyweight title fights, they were a big deal. They were worthy of a tuxedo jacket. So I personally thought that you were trying to make a point that tonight was special. Nevertheless, you look great. Now, earlier this week on Ariel and the Bad Guy on ESPN Plus, you talked a lot about the weigh-ins. You said the weigh-ins were going to be must-see TV. Well, Friday morning, they were must-see TV, and I'm dying to get your thoughts on this. Stipe Miocic ended up weighing in 12 pounds lighter than he did for the first fight in 2018. Now, I asked you, what was the sweet spot? You said if he's under 240, there's some cause for concern. He ended up weighing 234. Are you worried?
I am not worried, but I am very curious, Ariel. I mean, listen, you weigh what you weigh for a certain reason. Basic nutrition, calories in versus calories out. I don't mind that the champ went down, but let me give you some other numbers. Yes, he's 12 pounds less than he was the first time he fought Francis, but excuse me, he's 4 pounds heavier than the last time he fought Daniel Cormier. I'm just wondering why. Did he have breakfast before the weigh-ins? At heavyweight, it's unlikely, but it's definitely possible. Is he retaining a little bit of water? Ariel, is he not getting the same road work in? Is he not burning the same calories? Did he not train and prepare the same? Look, you don't just weigh what you weigh. You weigh what you weigh for a reason. And for me to look at the champ and wonder why this is a moving scale, yes, for me, it's curious.
Is there something to be said, though, for the fact that he just beat arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time twice, back-to-back? His last performance against him, Daniel Cormier, of course, I'm talking about, in August, was maybe Stipe's best, most well-rounded performance. Maybe this is the better weight for him. You know, the I don't know, 230 to 235 range as opposed to 240 and up. Maybe this is actually, maybe it doesn't mean he's going to be as strong, but maybe he's quicker, lighter on his feet at this weight. What do you think about that?
And isn't that interesting? It's very hard to disagree with, Ariel. This is something that I want to identify with you now, and then I want to circle back to on Wednesday, next time you and I meet up for Ariel the Bad Guy. And I only say that because, yeah, you're right. I can't predict the future and what this is going to mean, but it is relevant somewhere. Usually fighters have a number. They generally weigh in at that same number. Use Francis by example. He's weighed the same thing for his last 7 fights, even if Stipe weigh-ins have been 2 of those. It's the same thing. When Stipe's weight is changing and it's bouncing, I'm just curious. I'm not passing judgment. I didn't think it was going to be a good thing when he showed up 230 pounds to take on Daniel Cormier. When for the first fight with Daniel Cormier, he was 241 pounds. He took off 11. Was very curious. Put on 1 pound from his 230 to his 231 to fight Daniel the second time. And now he's put on another few pounds to get closer to this 235. What does it mean, Ariel? I'm not ready to pass judgment, but I do want to identify it so that I have the right to circle back.
Okay, fair enough. What about Francis Ngannou? Weighed the exact same as he did back in 2018, but if you look at the pictures, he looks different, right? It's a different 263. Would you agree?
I think I see what you're seeing. Some of that can just be done with lighting, but of course he weighed the same. Everybody gets in and weighs the same. Nobody changes unless they change classes. And of course, that's a broad stroke. You could have 0.5 of a pound here or there, but a fighter, particularly a top fighter, particularly a championship contender fighter, Ariel, they weigh the same thing every time. And I'm bringing this to you. It's very curious. I mean, one constant, as it has to do with Stipe and weigh-ins, is it's been a moving target.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual fight itself. A lot has been made of the fact that Francis is a vastly improved fighter since the one who fought Stipe back in 2018. He's on this amazing 4-fight winning streak. None of his fights have gone past the 71-second mark. Meanwhile, you have Stipe, who did get knocked out in between this fight and the last one to Daniel Cormier, but then came back and won 2 straight fights. I feel like Stipe is the more improved fighter, yet I see a lot of people saying Francis is the more improved fighter. And I'm sitting here wondering, how do you know? The guy's not fighting past the 71-second mark. Like, how do we truly know how much more improved he is? Who do you think has improved more since the first fight?
Yeah, don't tell me what other people are saying, okay? There's very few analysts that can keep up a paycheck and be on the worldwide leaders because they're so good at it, all right? People are going to tell you that one of the Paul brothers, and I can't tell them apart, is better boxer than Ben Askren. There is just silliness out there that we have to put up with. You and I have to set it aside and tell people straight. There is absolutely not one piece of evidence that you could bring forward to show me that Francis Ngannou is a better fighter now, let alone a different fighter. You couldn't tell me he was a better fighter or even a different fighter than prior to beating Stipe. And if I was to back you up to the phenomenon that was the narrative by the pundits leading into their first fight, it was Stipe is going to lose to Francis, and Francis is going to go on and lose to nobody. He was supposed to be the next best thing. This was the belief. Dana White was so confident in it, he even got Stipe to be the underdog in that first meeting just because he believed in Francis so much. Turned out Francis is as good as advertised. Turns out Francis is having a hard time getting out of the first round, let alone the first minute. He's absolutely special, Ariel. He has done nothing to show us from his first fight with Stipe to now, nothing. And I mean a grand zero that he can stop a takedown. He has had 0 takedown attempts put on him. He has gotten 0 takedowns from the fight that he fought Stipe to this time. He has scrambled up off of the bottom a total of 0 times in his first fight with Stipe to now. Anybody that offers for you this is a different fighter or a changed fighter or a better fighter has no piece of data, not one, that they can turn to.
Okay, and speaking of that, considering Stipe's newfound weight, his lighter weight, do you expect him to use his wrestling as much in this fight?
Yes, I think that Stipe is going to have an easier job getting a hold of Francis. I think he's going to have a harder time knocking the big guy off balance. Look, you can break down technique of wrestling all day, where the hands go, where the head is, get your hips in. Bottom line is you're trying to knock a guy off balance and let gravity do the rest. Size matters when you're trying to tip a guy. Size matters when you're trying to explode this way or jar his weight the opposite. And Stipe's coming in lighter, not to mention, if you get on top of an opponent, this just makes common sense. The heavier you are, the easier time you're going to have pinning him down. That was another key to Stipe's success in the first one. It wasn't just the takedowns. It was his ability to keep Francis there. Both those abilities are going to be diminished just by the weigh-in. And I'm splitting hairs here, by the way. They're not going to be greatly diminished, but they are going to be at a lesser effect.
Okay, so I want to ask you another thing about Stipe, because I think we both agree he is the more improved fighter since the first time they met 3.5 years ago. But I also feel like we don't put enough stock into those 3 Daniel Cormier fights. And what I mean by that is they were so spread out over time, right? Like they fought once a year for 3 years. And you know, we sometimes talk in fighting like, oh, Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler, they were changed men after those wars, right? Like people can change, fighters can change. You can leave a piece of yourself in the cage when you get involved in a war like that. Those 3 Cormier fights, those were wars, right? I mean, the first one he got knocked out in. The fourth one, the second one he finished Cormier in the 4th round, but he was losing that fight. And then the third one went the distance. And so I'm wondering, do you think that Stipe, while maybe an improved fighter because he just went toe-to-toe with one of the greats of all time, is actually a more beaten up fighter. And here we have Francis, who is not getting the cage time, but is a much more fresh fighter going into this fight. And that's to his advantage. Do you get what I'm saying?
Ariel, that is very big of you because you are correct. You do not get better in this sport by having done it. You diminish. You leave a piece of yourself out there. Those wars are not great. Yes, the fresher athlete, both with the mind, but also the physicality, has something in his favor. The downside, which is glaring for Francis, he is becoming a victim of his own success, much like Ronda Rousey. When you can get the opposition out of there in not only less than a round, but less than a minute. 7 and 8 and 9 minutes roll around and you are in an experience that is not only harder than what you thought it was going to be, it's harder than anything you've prepared for. And while we are being told that Francis is a better fighter, Ariel, it could turn out to be true. All I'm submitting for the jury is that there's no evidence to that. He not only hasn't stopped a takedown, he's never had an opponent try to take him down. Have you ever thought about it in the literal sense? Not one opponent has ever changed elevation and tried to grab Francis. Then they must succeed and show Francis's ability to get an underhook and scramble up off the bottom without that having happened, and it didn't happen. Saying that he's better, meaning Francis, than the last time they fought is nothing more than words. There's no evidence to support it. And please let me be wordy on this, because I believe the counter is what you just laid out, which is, okay, fine. He doesn't necessarily, there was a gap. Francis doesn't necessarily have to have gotten better if Stipe diminished. That argument is one I'll listen to.
Okay, so the first round back in 2018 is one of my favorite rounds in UFC heavyweight title history, not so much because of the action, but because of the tension, because of the buildup, because it felt like WrestleMania 3. It felt like Hogan and Andre. You knew something great was going to happen. And in the end, it was very close to ending in the first round. Stipe took some big shots, but we learned that he has a tremendous chin. He's got a big head. He took those shots. He kept on trucking. He was able to weather the storm and eventually win via decision. How do you think this first round plays out? Do you think it's similar to the first round back in 2018, or are you expecting something completely different?
I'm expecting Stipe to understand I need to get a hold of this guy right now. I think a little bit too much has been made of Stipe, and he must get the takedown. However, he must control range. He must get to the body. He must get an underhook. He must push the big man into the fence, ultimately trying to drag him down the entire time. But I think in that first round, when Francis was able to connect, I think it's because Stipe didn't realize, man, this guy's fast. Everybody knew he was powerful. Talk about Ngannou. Everybody knew the damage and dangers of him connecting. I think that Stipe learned on the fly just how fast this guy was. Men that are that big usually don't move that fast, Ariel. That's why I'm suggesting for you that Stipe didn't quite realize. Stipe was taking shots that he didn't see coming. So finally he realized as soon as the big man moves, I need to drop my stance and come into him.
Of course, these two men aren't just fighting for the heavyweight championship. They're also fighting for the right to fight Jon Jones in Jones's heavyweight debut. And that might be an even greater prize than the belt itself. If you're Jon Jones in Albuquerque tonight, watching this fight, who are you rooting for? Who would you rather meet in your heavyweight debut?
I've asked myself that question many times. Listen, if Francis Ngannou becomes the heavyweight champion, Francis will not only represent the most unsophisticated champion in all of the UFC, he will represent the most unsophisticated championship in the history of the modern era. Okay, Francis Ngannou is a black belt in outcome. He is a white belt in technique. Francis does not understand this sport. He does not understand many of the realms of the sport. However, he does not need to. He can break through anything. He has the great equalizer to shut you off and put fear in you. He has a massive size. He's a massive man, and he's not afraid to compete. And I bring this to you because Jon Jones is a technician. Jon Jones is a tactician. He is not only changing the sport, he's elevating it, and he's innovating on the fly. If I had $1 for every Jon Jones fight that he did where Joe Rogan didn't even know the name of the move that Jon had done because it had never been seen by the world, okay, I'd have about $15. But Ariel, that represents $15 more than any other fighter could have gotten me in that scenario. I bring this to you because generally technique will beat brute strength. In that regard, I think that Jon would like that. The other side of the coin is that's a big man. You bring me Stipe. He's a little closer to my size. We can figure that one out. Maybe a little bit harder, but we can put it together in a more level playing field. And I think that Jon has probably volleyed back and forth which one of those options he does prefer.
I get what you're saying about Francis, but by the way, there's no way you can convince me that he has less technique than Brock Lesnar did. No way. What are you talking about? Brock Lesnar was way more of a white belt than
You
Francis
think so?
did.
I disagree with that. I
Really?
really disagree with that. Yeah, sure. Because what realm are you going to back off into the amateurs and put Francis in? I mean, are you going to tell me whether it's boxing or jiu-jitsu, is there any realm of this sport you could put him in and he'd be the greatest out there? Because Brock Lesnar did win the Division I title.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, that is the main event. We have plenty more to discuss as far as the main event is concerned. 10 fights on this card. Main event is a massive one. We also have Tyron Woodley against Vicente Luque, a very important fight in what could be Tyron Woodley's final fight in the UFC. You got the return of Sugar Sean O'Malley. Something for everyone tonight at UFC 260. And Chael, what an honor this is. I mean, holy smokes. Usually it's just you and I, a little Anik appearance. We're not usually joined by combat sports royalty, but look who has decided to join us. The great Teddy Atlas, the smartest man in boxing and slowly but surely becoming one of the smartest analysts in MMA as well. He's crossing over to our world, and he has a relationship with one of the competitors in tonight's main event. So we wanted to have him on for a few minutes to join us. Teddy, thank you so much for doing this. It's always an honor to speak to you. I know that you are, somewhat close to Francis Ngannou. Not going to say that you're best friends with him, but you've trained with him before. Can you tell us about the genesis of this relationship?
Yeah, well, you just kind of led into it the right way, I guess. But I'm very, first of all, I appreciate being on you guys' show, to be on guys that are the leaders in this stuff, or two of the leaders in this stuff in the UFC, and that are good people and people of the kind of stature and character that you guys are. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate that the fans and the fighters of the UFC have allowed me to come into their world a little bit, to at least put a foot into the door. I feel very honored and privileged that they have allowed me to. And that's kind of how it started with me and Francis Ngannou, because what happened was we were doing more and more interviews on my podcast with UFC fighters. They were coming on. They saw what we were doing and what I was doing on breaking down the UFC fights. And some of them started to reach out by this thing called social media. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but I've found out about it recently. I'm a caveman. I wouldn't even be on here with you if my wife and daughter didn't set this up, because I had a flip phone until about a year and a half ago. So full disclosure. But now I am able to do this stuff. And, the UFC people, they were so gracious. They started to put stuff on the social media. Teddy, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate you talking about it. And some of them even volunteered to come on the show. And then the man who does, Rob, who does the show with me and produces the show, he was good enough to get connected with a friend of both of us, a very important person with the UFC directing, Charlie Monahan, good man. He was able to connect with the PR people, the proper people at UFC, and we were starting to get more and more UFC guests. And Francis came along, and he said he'd be glad to come on our show. We were very glad to have him on the show. And not only was he on the show, but he had posted a video. I don't know if you guys saw it. You probably did, where he was practicing with his coach, sort of the Mike Tyson uppercut. He's a big Tyson fan. You guys know it. You know more about it than I do with the UFC fighters. And so when he came on the show, I had seen that video. They made sure I saw it. Somebody made sure I saw it. And so we did a nice interview with him. And we started talking about the Tyson uppercut and stuff. And I illustrated it on the show because, I told him you got to get a little lower. It's kind of a hell of a thing to be telling a 6'5" guy. You got to get lower. But I said, you got to get a little lower and get those legs involved, those tree trunks that you have. You got to grab the floor, not just use your upper body, but get the floor under you. And as if he wasn't dangerous enough, So that's what some of the fans said. They were laughing. They said, "Oh my God, what do you want this guy to get arrested for homicide?" So I was illustrating to him, but at the same time as I was showing it to him, his coach did a great job, having it set up to the point that he did. But I was just taking it to the next level a little bit. And as I'm saying it to him, Chael will understand it. Well, you both understand this. I was saying, I'm not sure this is the right identity for you because you're not 5'10", to get down in that crouch and, do that. But I'm going to show it to you the way it was meant to be done and the way that I showed it to Tyson. But I would obviously think that you want to be on the outside, you want to control the outside world and use that size in a different way, not only on the inside, but on the outside, where you control geography that way and you dictate where guys can go and where guys can't go. But so we did that. We had a beautiful interview because of him. And then his manager, also a very good person, reached out to us, to Rob, to get to me, to say, listen, we understand Teddy's going to be in Las Vegas. Again, that's social media stuff. I don't know. Stuff gets around. And I was out there visiting my son, who works for the Raiders. He's the assistant director of scouting for now it's the Vegas Raiders. So they knew I was going to be out there. Their gym is based out there. They said, is there any chance Francis could get a training session with you? I said, yeah, you're glad to do things for good people. So we met. His coach was there. They were there. We went in. We did probably a 2-hour, maybe even more, a 2-hour training session. Some of it wound up being put up on social media. And he was just a good guy to work with. Obviously very talented, obviously very, very big, very strong. And he's got one of those things, again, Chael, it speaks right away to ring true in your ears. Power. I mean, punches, for me, they're born. They're not made. I mean, you can improve the delivery system, the technique, so they land that punch more frequently and more cleaner, obviously. And that's very important because otherwise you just have a bomb that, if it doesn't get to the target, it blows up and makes a hole in the ground. So, but he's got that eraser. And so I was very aware of it right away. You're aware when a person truly has that power, truly where it's natural, it's genetic, and it's the hammer of Thor. I mean, you're like, wow, I've seen this before, not too often, but it brought my memory back to when I did see it with a guy like Tyson. So we worked on things that I thought would make more sense to help the delivery system, so to speak. And so we had a nice workout. And matter of fact, there was even some chatter about the possibility of me, training him in the future. So, we left it at that. We never got together to actually make that happen, to do any training. You never know. I mean, if he wins the heavyweight title, who knows? But he's in good hands and he's a good human being. See, I believe there's power in that too, because he does things in his homeland, in Cameroon, where he's helping people. And I really believe that's a power. That's a strength. I mean, I know he's got the physical power, but that's an internal power. That's a spiritual power that you believe what you do is going to help you help others. It's going to help you in your mission. I believe Ali had that power. I believe Pacquiao had that power where he felt what he did was connected to helping the good people in the Philippines that needed help. So I really believe that transfers, that connects from the physical doing to, mentally believing you can do it and believing you have a mission. So that's how we got started. And, I have nothing but respect for the UFC fighters, but I'll be rooting for Francis. I have respect for Miocic, what he's done, and, the champion he's been. He's probably the best. You guys will verify this, but he's probably the greatest heavyweight UFC champion of all time. A little bit ahead of DC, who's another great one and another great human being. I don't think that's an accident. Those things come together, partner together. But that's where we got started, Ariel.
All right. Well, Teddy, let me ask you something, because I want to get this a real good perspective on it. When we, the MMA community, see Francis, we go, oh my goodness, this guy has a rare power. But I know a pugilist, a boxer, that's a whole nother level of power. It's a whole nother level that you get these guys trained when they only need these two weapons. Where does a guy like Francis stack? I mean, I heard you even throw out a name to compare of Mike Tyson. Come on, Francis isn't as powerful as Mike Tyson, is he?
Yes. As far as natural born power, you're born, you're not made. It's born or it's not. It's there, it's not there.
Sure.
As far as that goes, yes. As far as the delivery system, no. You're 100% right, Chael. He hasn't developed the technique. He's not sophisticated enough in that world to get it to the target in a regular way, in a consistent effort or consistent manner, the way Tyson was. That makes all the difference in the world. That's the difference from not having power, but being effective, efficient with your power. He's not consistently efficient with his power, but the power is always there. And with that power, the threat of always being able to pull himself out of the fire at any moment, that has an impact on the opponent, on what the opponent will try and not try to do, just for the fact that that power exists. So it works for him physically, and it works for him emotionally and mentally. And listen, you know what I always say in boxing, when I was calling all the fights on ESPN and now doing the podcast, 75% of this thing is mental. You know, I mean, so that is something that serves him, as I said, physically and up here.
Teddy, before we let you go, I would love to get your perspective on this. Stipe told me that once he beats Francis and once he beats John Jones, who will be his next opponent if he wins this fight, of course, later on this year, he would love to fight. Like, his face lights up when he talks about this. He would love to fight the winner of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in a boxing match. Stipe, I don't know if you know this, former Golden Gloves champion way back in the day. Of course, that's not the the upper echelon of heavyweight boxing, but he does have some history in boxing. Do you think, given what you've seen from Stipe, that he would have a shot at hanging with either Fury or Joshua in a boxing match?
If you're going to give an answer, you give a frank answer, and you give it, give it as directly and as fast as it comes to your mind. No, but I'll qualify that no. He won't embarrass himself the same way that McGregor did not embarrass himself with, I thought McGregor was, I was there with Chael. I mean, we were working together, which was nice for that whole week. And I was there ringside where McGregor was winning after 4 rounds. I know some people, some boxing purists don't like to hear it, but the truth is the truth. And then Mayweather took over. But again, he didn't embarrass himself. Because of his background, because of his championship in background, because of his championship mindset, he will not embarrass himself. But I don't see that he has real opportunity after 3-4 rounds of being able to win with either one of those fighters. But again, if it was MMA rules, I'm taking him because, he could bring into, you just touched on it. He was a Golden Glove champion in the amateurs, but he was a collegiate wrestling champion, also. So if he could use both of those abilities, yeah, he's going to win. And I think that's the big difference going into this fight. There's you guys already can break it down better than me, but for my world, I don't have to be Chael Sonnen, one of the top MMA guys and UFC guys, to tell you that in this fight, Miocic is the much more rounded fighter, the much more dimensional fighter, the much more sophisticated fighter, the much more seasoned fighter, the much more experienced fighter. He could do it on the floor, on the mat, grappling, or he could do it striking, either one. But at the end of the day, if I'm handicapping this fight, I'm looking in a different direction. You got to look in the direction that after 3 years from their first fight, and Ngannou was dominated in that fight. Why? I always say, Chael, and Ariel, that the most important part, the most important dimension of boxing for me, fighting, is geography. Who owns the geography they need to own to give them the best chance to serve their talents? And the geography was of that ring was, or of that octagon, was ruled and owned by Miocic. And I think that what has transpired since then is a little over 3 years, 5 fights for Ngannou, where he's had a chance to control his geography better, to be technically more sound, because if he's got to win by striking. Is there a chance on the floor that he could get him into a guillotine? Pardon me for daring to use those terms, please, my apologies. But, you know, that he could get him into a guillotine, into a chokehold, into a submission hold with his pure strength? Yeah, I'm going to say I saw that. But for the most part, Ngannou to win has to be on his feet. He's got to be standing. And I think he's enhanced his chances of doing that with 3 years of a chance to, number one, get more seasoning, get more experience, and improve his technique and his conditioning. I don't know that his conditioning was optimal the first time, but I'll tell you one thing, and again, Chael can verify this, I think he burned up too fast, just being at the moment. And he wasn't used to that stage. He wasn't used to what it felt like, you know, the moment. And now he's gotten a chance to be used to it. So I think in that area, he'll be better. Now, the other people will say, Teddy, Sonnen is going to be even better. No, that's where I differ. Because, not Sonnen, I'm thinking of Chael, but Sonnen would be better. No, that's but
Stipe.
But Stipe Miocic will not be better. Why? Because in the 3 years he's had since that first fight, he's had 3 very tough fights with DC, Daniel Cormier. One of them he got knocked out. Guess what? In my business, you don't judge a fighter's age chronologically. You judge it by the amount of punches they take. 38 years old, but he's older. Partly because of those fights. I think that he may be deteriorated a little bit from those tough fights and from being knocked out. He's got 3 losses, Miocic. Twice he's been knocked out. So you know what? With him maybe sliding a little bit because of what I just said, and Ngannou rising a little bit, I think that there's a chance, a better chance, for Ngannou to own his geography, know how to do it, be more together mentally in that situation, in that stage, and be able to have a better delivery system where that great eraser, that Thor's hammer, as I referred to it earlier, can land. So, again, would I be shocked if Miocic won? No. He's better in all areas, all areas. Matter of fact, it's kind of interesting that he's still an underdog, even though he dominated the first time. Maybe people are a little bit seeing what I'm talking about, maybe, or maybe it's just that they're, you know, in love with the power and the possibility that that one shot can turn the lights out. Bang! Turn the lights out, make everything dark, and make everything bright for Ngannou. So that's my breakdown, my amateur breakdown in your world. But for me, there are parallels in the fight game, and for me, those parallels usually show themselves.
What a privilege. Chael, how great was this? I feel like we should be, we should be paying you for this information, for this knowledge, for this insight.
I wouldn't take the money, first of all, because when you have the privilege of being, I don't want to overdo it, but I feel what I feel. I say what I feel. When you have the privilege of being with good people, people that are sound human beings and accomplished people in their profession, well, you're lucky to have that opportunity. So I'm privileged for that.
Love having you in the MMA world. I'm happy that everyone has accepted you. Your insight is second to none. Your information is second to none. Your experience second to none. Enjoy the fights tonight. Hope for your sake, your guy wins, and we look forward to having you back on in the near future to do this again. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right, Chael. So we have focused on the main event for quite some time on this here preview show. Now let's give some love to the co-main event, and in particular, Tyron Woodley. What a run, what a career, the former UFC welterweight champion, a champion who I don't think gets talked about enough, a run that I don't think gets talked about enough. You know, it's interesting. We're starting to talk about Usman and the GSP conversation. No, Usman has entered the Tyron Woodley, Matt Hughes, Pat Miocic conversation, and we don't talk about Tyron enough in that regard. This could very well be his final fight in the UFC. It's the final fight of his contract. I have confirmed this. And if you read the tea leaves and you see what's happened recently to Anthony Pettis and Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem and Yoel Romero, that kind of fighter isn't long for the UFC these days. Would you be surprised with a win if he actually sticks around? I think he leaves win or lose. Do you think he might stay with a win?
Ariel, it would be a feel-good story for me if T Wood in this case. If you win, you retire. If you lose, you retire. I only say it because not a lot of guys get to go out the way they want. Most guys don't get to go out in a co-main event spot. This is a former champion of the world who I firmly believe will be a Hall of Famer someday. I would love for the story to end well for T Wood. I can just tell you, we don't usually do that as fighters. We usually get bit. I mean, Misha Tate is now coming back. Just to offer an example, Oscar De La Hoya apparently is coming back. I mean, I'm just offering you. A lot of people don't know when to call it quits. If this was a situation for T Wood and that was his own decision, man, Ariel, I'd be happy for him.
Yeah, and he's turning 39 next month. So, you know, he's getting up there. By the way, when are you coming back, since all these people are coming back?
I'm not. You know what? I already had you got to retire once so you can have the comeback fight. Partner, I've done it. I'm putting my feet up from now on. I'm hanging out with you.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, dare I say, a better choice, a better life. But that's just my opinion. What has been the difference with the Tyron Woodley that we've seen as of late, as opposed to the Tyron Woodley in his prime? The last 3 fights, now we say 3-fight losing streak. We sometimes forget Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington, arguably the 3 best welterweights in the UFC right now. Those are the 3 men that he just lost to, but still, it never felt like he was in those fights, right? He lost every single round of those fights. It never felt like he went into the next gear. What has been the problem with Tyron Woodley as of late?
Okay, and Ariel, full disclosure, Tyron is a friend of mine, and we used to be teammates. We used to train together. Now, I just want to advertise that for the audience because I don't want to answer the question the way you asked it. Okay. I want to answer it in this regard, okay? Let me tell you what I like about this fight. I like that it's scheduled for a maximum of 15 minutes. I like that that's 70% of the time than what T Wood has been booked for in the last 6 years. And the reason I like that, T Wood is an explosion fighter. He is going to go on a couple of sprints throughout the course of the night. If one of those sprints doesn't get you out of there, he's going to be a little fatigued. And now it's your turn to try to get even on the points. But generally, whether it was the Condit fight, whether it was the night that he beat Robbie Lawler, one of those sprints brings too much of a storm for most trees to be left standing. And in this situation, it won't matter anyway because T Wood's only got to be out there 15 minutes. Worst case scenario. I'm bringing that to you because the explosive fighter does not now need to be strategic and try to figure out and make sure that he's got a couple of gears left later in the fight. There is no later in the fight. There is no championship rounds. Hey, T Wood, you're a sprinter, baby. Come out there and sprint.
Yeah, and he's fighting a tough guy. Maybe not the name.
I slipped a baby in there. You know, I'm really not that guy. It's a special kind of guy. I said baby, but I don't want you to think I'm baby guy. Like, that just happened.
It felt right in the moment.
It felt right. Yes, it felt right.
It felt right in the moment. You're talking about a dear friend. He's fighting a tough guy. Vicente Luque isn't a household name, but since his debut, only 2 losses have been to Leon Edwards and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 2 of the other best welterweights in the world. So this is a tough out, a lot of pressure. We'll see if he can end the losing streak. Now, I want to ask you about a guy who is coming off a loss, his only loss thus far of his great career. Sugar Sean O'Malley finally returning after the loss to Marlon Vera last year. He's fighting Thomas Almeida. And Chael, he's taking a page out of your book. He is still referring to himself as a undefeated fighter. He's saying the loss, quote unquote, to Chito Vera, as he puts it, was a fluke. He doesn't seem to be accepting the loss. Now, maybe he's working me. Maybe he actually believes it, and he's telling us something different. How do you feel about the way he's handling all of this?
I think he was a sportsman about it. I also think he was a gentleman. And don't forget, when he's saying this,
gentleman,
this isn't for PR. Yes, it's not for PR and to green fans, okay? He's controlling what he lets into his bubble. Sometimes you have to deny something. Sometimes you have to outright deny it and live in an alternative universe, Ariel. Okay, this is how mental and subjective these things can be. And if you can't deal with them and you can't confront them, they never happened. As silly as that may sound, you'll see many of the greats do that. They'll always be careful what they let in. They'll be careful admitting, yes, I gave my absolute best and I came in second. They'll convince themselves, I might have got beat by that guy, but I could have done better. I could have done this differently. I didn't try as hard as I needed to. I didn't prepare right. Look, you're not going to like the answers, but he's letting us in to his mindset. And I think he's letting us in sincerely. He doesn't want to deal with this. He wants to be an undefeated fighter. He doesn't like that it's there. So instead of accepting it, he's denying it. I think he's showing us something about his competitive side. And if you put that and juxtapose it with many of the other greats through history, they do the same thing.
But is that healthy? Like, shouldn't you come to terms with the loss, learn from it, and then grow from it, as opposed to just pretend like it didn't happen?
It's certainly one way that you're suggesting, but don't forget there isn't a season here. This is a matter of he gets a summer break and then he starts with training camp and come back and see in the winter. It's not like that. He's going to get a phone call at some point. He's have to get back in the gym, and he's got to go in there with a good attitude and a positive outlook. And if he hasn't come to terms with this, by example, but if he hasn't, Ariel, outright denying it, blocking it from your bubble, turning it into something funny. Look, humor solves a lot of problems, and he is doing a little bit of tongue-in-cheek there, denying that he lost a fight. John Jones is denying that he lost a fight, where he elbowed or got disqualified. I only share for you. You be careful what you let in your bubble. John Jones got people to go along with it. And in all fairness, O'Malley got a lot of people to agree to and say, a fight isn't supposed to finish that way.
All right.
It's silly. Partner, I understand this is silly what we're talking about, but it's still interesting because he's letting us into his mindset and the psyche of the athlete, particularly a young man coming off of his first defeat. Huge question marks. How is he going to rebound? Is he going to rebound? He's letting us in, guys. It never happened.
Yeah, we've seen some high-profile fighters lose and handle it that way. We've seen others like Conor McGregor kind of own up to it and then say, hey, I want to right that wrong and get back to it. We've seen Ronda Rousey not be able to come to terms with it, and then you see how she responds against Amanda Nunes. We'll see what works for Sean O'Malley. It's interesting, and I don't know if you can even answer this question. You may not feel comfortable. Do we know yet what O'Malley's ceiling is? Like, do you think he can be a champion in the UFC? Do we know yet just how good this guy is, or, has it yet to be seen in your opinion?
Well, I really do. Look, I know that Weiland got to the highest levels of that weight class. So when O'Malley shut him off in the first round, people go, oh, yeah, but that wasn't the same Weiland. I mean, we couldn't dismiss people. The night that Floyd Mayweather made Canelo Alvarez look stupid, but now all of a sudden we're hearing, well, Canelo was too young. If Floyd would have lost, it would have been Floyd was too old. I'm only sharing with you. It's very hard to get these things right. And when I do look at O'Malley, man, I see something special. He's in a loaded division. He's going to need a Colonial win. He's going to need a TJ win, a Sandhagen win, something along these lines. A Uriah Faber win, even at this stage in his career. A Frank Yeager, I mean, I only bring to you, he still needs that big opponent. Thomas Almeida is not that. But Thomas Almeida does serve for the big question mark. Is Sean going to be able to let the past be the past, or is he going to go out there and is he going to be gun shy? And in the world of boxing, and it's really a boxing expression more than MMA, but once a fighter suffers his first knockout, they say his chin never comes back. That's not true, physiologically speaking. When he gets his first knockout, now mentally, he's shy. Mentally, he's worried. That makes him slower. That lets him get hit more and more. The chin doesn't actually go. It's the mind that goes.
And, the mind is a terrible thing to waste, so you don't want it to go, right?
That was a very melancholy response. You can't get this kind of analysis anywhere. Like, you can't get access and to hear the things that come out of my mind. I am a true student of the sport, really a true historian. Like, if you were to play Jeopardy and you could have a partner in this, you want me. And when I bring you some of this stuff, so you're a little melancholy response. You're dumbfounded. Your mind is blown. You're speechless.
There's no way that I can match that. So I
understand that.
Yeah, there's absolutely.
I just want to make sure the audience understands that.
Oh, there are levels. They're
wondering why you're sitting there with nothing to say. You're standing there on third base wearing a catcher's mitt because I've blown your mind.
That's right. I mean, there's a reason why you're wearing a tuxedo jacket and I'm wearing a checkered shirt here. There's a reason why I'm in my sweatpants. You're, in your palatial estate. There's levels to this game, Chael. There are levels to this game.
Fair point.
All right. And of course, as always, we love to talk to the voice of the UFC just minutes before he has to head over to the UFC Apex to call the pay-per-view. You know him by now. You know that face. You know that mustache. He's the one and only Jon Anik, kind enough to join us from his hotel room in Las Vegas. Jon, of course, we want to talk to you about the main event. Massive stakes, massive fight. Three best words in sports, heavyweight title fight. But I got to ask you first, are you preparing for your own kind of fight? Because word on the internet is you're getting into shape. You're thinking about moving out to bantamweight, it seems, which feels like a big cut. Tell us, give us the scoop here.
Well, if I was ever to compete in a weight class in a combat sports setting, I think 135 pounds would be the weight class. But no, I mean, I have talked extensively about doing a charity amateur combat sports contest against my identical twin brother. But candidly, I've been hospitalized with 3 concussions in my life. So I got to work around that head trauma, at least get scanned or something. But no, I was having fun on social media. And now I understand it. You got to be a little bit careful. But now I have a lot of amateur bantamweights who want to fight me. And if I want to go do skill development for 18 to 24 months, I don't have a huge problem getting in there if I can get cleared medically. So, you know, I sort of, when I said anyone can get it at 135 pounds, I wasn't talking about Ricky Simone. I'm talking about the amateurs that are 0-4 looking for a W.
I would love to know more about these 3 concussions, but I feel like we should save that for.
I'll just say basketball for 2 of them. Very violent, out cold.
Okay. Wow. Geez. Who knew? All right. Let's move on and let's talk about the fights, the ones that you're not going to be involved in, but you will be calling, of course, on this evening. We've got an amazing title fight between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. You've been there. I always love to get sort of, you know, the temperature of the atmosphere from you, especially involving the 2 top competitors. My read, and from the people that I've talked to, Stipe couldn't be more relaxed, calm, cool, and collected, joking and whatnot. Francis, somewhat of the same. What's been your read on both men as they head into this massive fight tonight?
I mean, they both couldn't be in a better place. I mean, that might sound like promotional hyperbole or sound simplistic, but that's really the way it is. Do I think Stipe is in the best shape of his life, like he was going into the 3rd meeting with Daniel Cormier? I don't know if he's in quite that good shape. He looks so handsome for that Stipe, for that DC Trilogy fight. But for Francis Ngannou, you know, I was on Chael's YouTube channel earlier today, and Chael sort of insinuated, what am I missing? When in Boston, Massachusetts, in January of 2018, when Francis Ngannou walked into our fighter meeting, he was toast. Like before the meeting, he was putting his head on the table. He had nothing. He shouldn't have taken that fight. And that's not an excuse for the performance. A performance in which, by the way, he stuffed 8 of 14 takedowns and did last the full 25 minutes. But he's just physically been training and living his life as a full-time mixed martial artist for the last 3 years. The pressure for me is on Eric Nixick and these coaches. I'm a little concerned on the Francis side that he hasn't had anything resembling grappling repetitions or minutes for years. But this is on the coaches, as far as I'm concerned, to get him prepared. And if he can be relaxed, as Kamaru Usman suggests he needs to be, I think he deserves the distinction as the slight favorite. I think he should be favored in a combat sports setting against almost any man in the world right now.
All right, Anik, I got a question. You're at the Apex. You've been hanging out in the bubble all week. Have you put eyes on Jon Jones? And the reason I ask, if Jon is present, it would add to the rumor that he's going to face the winner. Apparently, the rematch clause, regardless of outcome, is out the door. Jon Jones is next. Is he in the house?
It doesn't appear as though he's made the trip, but as you know, Southwest Airlines can get him here rather quickly from where he is in New Mexico. All I can tell you is there are extra seats on the floor. They look wicked comfortable. But as yet, I don't believe I have anything in format, honestly, I can tell you that suggests that he's going to be there. So we'll see if something changes in the next few hours, but I don't expect that Johnny Bones will be in the building. Hopefully he'll be vocal on Twitter. As you guys know, he has been for most of these pay-per-views this year.
He tends to not be very vocal leading up to the fights, but then when the fights are actually going on and afterwards, that's when he tends to show up. So we'll see if he does, in fact, do so. Chael seemed to have some hesitation about the fact that, you know, Stipe's under 240. He's 12 pounds lighter this time around than he was 3.5 years ago. You were there at the weigh-ins on Friday. Ultimately, I know we're not here to ask you your prediction because we know you can't make it, but ultimately, how do you feel about him being this light going into the rematch, considering the success that he had the first time around?
Well, I'm telling you, I think the bigger, stronger, possibly faster man, right, should be the betting favorite. And everybody else is telling you, why is Stipe the underdog? And I don't want to get into a gambling conversation as to two-way action, but that's what they're trying to draw, and mission accomplished. I don't know. I just think there are a lot of layers to this fight on the Stipe side. Again, when I say he's not in the DC trilogy type shape, he's pretty darn close. And I try to extract things from Stipe. And one thing he said to us was that he tries to be perfect in training. And largely, if you take Marcus Marinelli to his word, like, Stipe's perfect in training. So fight IQ wise, strategy wise, skill wise, I think he's ready to present the best version. Is his hunger on the Ngannou level? That I can't answer, but I don't know. I think you're going to get a different version of Francis Ngannou. And I think if he has to be standing there at the beginning of round 4, I think Ngannou will be in a better place than he was in the first meeting.
All right, John, look, corners matter, okay? Who you're going to bring to battle with you matters. And there was even a big storyline of Matt Serra being absent to Aljo's fight, just to offer something from recent memory. But we're being told that Kamaru Usman will be in Francis' corner to serve as a wrestling coach. For me, that's problematic, being that Francis trains in Vegas and Usman trains in Colorado. I don't know how much time they've spent together. Was that PR? Was that just a press release? Or has Usman officially been put in the role as a wrestling coach?
I don't expect him to be very verbal. You've seen even James Krause be deferential when he's working with Mark Montoya. I think Usman's going to take a back seat. Now, Eric Nixick and Dewey Cooper are not grappling guys and wrestling coaches, so we'll see how they navigate the corner on fight night. But there's no denying that Kamaru serves as this calming, unifying type force for Francis Ngannou. So anything that you can lean on in your corner, I think he also has his manager, Markel Martin, in his corner, if I'm not mistaken, but anything that you can extract good things from, I am all for. And I know Ngannou, draws a lot of confidence having Kamaru by his side, but I don't think he'll be pretty verbal. I could be wrong on that.
Couldn't agree with you more on that, John. In fact, this is actually the second time that Usman corners Ngannou in his UFC career. Didn't train with him. Feels like a lot of hoopla he wasn't there in this training camp. So feels like a lot of PR as far as I'm concerned. So I agree with you on that. I want to talk to you about a guy who knows a thing or two about PR as well. SUGA Sean O'Malley, one of the brightest young stars in the sport, of course, coming off his first pro loss. You spoke to him earlier this week, had a chance to speak to him as well. Still considers himself undefeated, considers the loss to Chito Vera a fluke. Do you feel like these are all warning signs, or is it just what he's trying to tell us, to generate some PR, generate some headlines, but deep down inside, has he learned a lesson or two from that loss to Vera?
I'm concerned that his body's not going to hold up. And I think that's what's on his mind much more than anything else. I don't know that I can sit here and tell you that doubt has started to creep in. But when we sat down with him a couple of fights ago, he said, I feel like I have a whole new right leg. And then for some reason or another, his leg failed him again. So short sample size in the UFC, and he's had 2 largely devastating injuries that have happened inside the octagon. It's a pretty rare circumstance, and it's alarming for me. And when I see him as a 3-1 favorite, it would give me tremendous pause as a bettor. But when he says, I'm an elite bantamweight and I'm one of the best guys in the world, like, the dude can grapple. Like, go watch Quintet Ultra, right? And I know that's a small sample size too, but like, this dude invested in his grappling for 36 months. Like, this guy is committed skill for skill to being the best in the world. I think he's mentally and physically tougher than people want to give him credit for. I'm not trying to take anything away from Chito, who landed those ground strikes. That was the factor in that fight as far as I'm concerned. But I believe in Sean O'Malley, the fighter. I'm concerned with the physical.
All right, John, I feel like we got a little bit of an elephant in the room, and maybe it's because it's a friend of ours. I'm talking about TYRON Woodley, but friend or not, elephant or not, there's some pressure going on tonight, particularly when you have a former world champion, 39 years of age, and we're armed with the information that world champion named Junior Dos Santos was just released after a loss. How much is on T. Wood's back, and mentally, is it too much for him to bear?
I don't think it's more pressure than there was going into the last couple, certainly not going into the Colby Covington fight. I think that, and you talk about a guy, by the way, I've been to Ferguson, Missouri, to his home, a guy that didn't want to talk to us in terms of extraction. The one thing he said about this fight, when I said, when it was first offered, what was your initial thought, is that there's some highlight potential for him. Now, is he going to be content to sort of let time expire and let clock run and spend some time up against the fence and shorten up what is already a short 3-round fight, or is he going to go for it and really try to produce a highlight and maybe put himself in harm's way to fight a fighter, to connect on a guy who isn't super defensive? So I don't know which version of Tyron Woodley we are going to see, but I do believe that it has to be the version that goes for it and is the version that is willing to get knocked out. Otherwise, I just don't think against this type of fighter, he's going to be able to produce the desired result. But mentally, I think he's okay.
An immense amount of pressure on his shoulders, trying to snap that 3-fight losing streak. Also, this is the final fight on his UFC contract. One wonders, win or lose, if this will be the final time we see him in the UFC. So obviously you will go into free agency. You want to go in on a win, not on a 4-fight losing streak. So we'll see if he could turn it around. What about Shane Young? What a week this man must have had, right? I mean, his teammate at CKB, Alexander Volkanovski, was supposed to be on this card. He gets pulled from the card after testing positive for COVID. It could have shaped up to be a massive month for the CKB boys, with Izzy at the beginning of the month, and the month has not ended well for Izzy as well. He got himself in a little bit of hot water earlier this week as well, with some very controversial and upsetting comments. And now here we have Volkanovski getting pulled from the card, and we thought Shane Young might get pulled from the card as well. How did he deal with all of that? Because, the COVID, you could feel nothing and test positive. His teammate test positive. How was he this week?
Well, and Jamie Malarkey, right? Brad Riddell fought Jamie Malarkey in his UFC debut. Brad Riddell, who saw his co-main event against Gregor Gillespie go away last week. Riddell's actually cornering Malarkey as well, or at least is scheduled to. I asked him today, why couldn't you and Gregor be competing here? There are a lot of details I can't get into, but anyone who has watched what Dan Hooker has been through in terms of navigating this dynamic and trying to get back to their home country, like these guys are constantly on the internet trying to navigate their way home to make it April 1st instead of April 16th. It's absolutely insane what these athletes are going through, and saying, all right, the next time I come to the US, I might have to bring my wife and my daughter, in Brad Riddell's case, because I might have to try to get 2 fights in here. It is a crazy situation. I'm so happy that Shane Young and Jamie Malarkey are both getting the chance to compete. And, I think they probably feel like it's touch and go until right up until they get to the arena.
Right. John, appreciate the time as always. We know you have to run to the arena. Good luck to you, DC, Joe Rogan, the entire crew. Will be watching UFC 260. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Great stuff as always from Jon Anik. Now time for everyone's favorite segment of these particular shows as we approach the start of UFC 260 on ESPN Plus. Your picks. All right, let's start with Sean O'Malley, Thomas Almeida. Who do you got?
Sugar Sean, I think the show continues. I think this is going to be a mental battle. I know about Sean's speed. I know how dangerous that kickboxing is mentally. Can he go in all 15 minutes? Mentally, does he believe I need to go in? I need to get rid of Almeida because I don't know if my leg can hold up. Look, these are some challenges that he's going to have to work for, but I've seen Sean O'Malley win a fight on one leg before. If he's got to do it tonight, I will see it again.
Tyron Woodley, Vicente Luque. Who do you got?
Tyron Woodley, the best is still yet to come. I mean that. I have a very different interpretation of Tyron's last losses, including his one to Gilbert Burns, where he got sent head over tea kettle and full mounted in 26 seconds. T Wood found a way to get up and go another 24 minutes. Okay, excuse me. The best is not behind us. T Wood is still the king for a reason.
Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou 2. Who do you got?
Bruce Buffer does not need to say and still. He needs to say again. Shame on us. Shame on all of you. Yes, Francis is the right #1 contender. Yes, he's a scary guy. It takes skills to be the champion. A left and a right hand. Guys, it's not 1993. Welcome to 2000 and Stipe.
And that was good. 2000 and Stipe was really good, Chael. You should trademark that. And most importantly, what? And I repeat, what is on the charcuterie board tonight?
I got everything on the board tonight. I'm going to send a picture. Now, actually, we've got some listeners that are weighing in. I want everybody to do this. We're going to tag it on Twitter. Ariel and I are going to start retweeting these things, but I got a little bit of everything, including jam, and that's because of EB. EB stepped up the game, started putting jam in. Miss Brittany found out about it. You want to play, EB? We're here to play tonight.
What kind of jam are we talking about? Raspberry? What are we talking about?
What kind of jam? No, excuse me, strawberry. How about that? Raspberry. The only reason I get raspberries, I'm out of strawberries. Excuse me, strawberry and grape.
Can I tell you the only issue that my wife and I have is that she continues to buy raspberry jam. I hate it. Too tardy. Love strawberry. Can't find it. I cannot, for the life of me, cannot find it in my fridge. I only find like 8 bottles or
Sure.
jugs of raspberry. Who wants raspberry?
Sure. And I'm not quite as far. I don't hate raspberry, but I would only use
Hate it.
raspberry if I was out of strawberry, for goodness sakes.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more, Chael. All right, on that note, let's go. UFC 260. It's about to pop off. Enjoy the fights. Hey, thank you very much to Jon Anik. Thank you very much to the great Teddy Atlas. Thank you very much to Chael Pete. Thank you to our producers, Jordan and Addison. I don't even know if they're still around. They might have gone to start their own charcuterie board because we're so long-winded here on the program. If they are still around, roll the credits, fade to black, as Chael Pete likes to say. Enjoy the fights. We'll talk to you.